Dear students, good morning. Welcome to La Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 20th August 2020. Today we are going to discuss only the editorials and there are no much news articles to be represented. In this scenario, the first article for discussion today is China-Russia ties as a major determinant. To understand this article, you need to know a bit of history, post Second World War history. After the Second World War, there were two poles. One is capitalistic pole or bloc and communist bloc. These were headed by USA and USSR respectively. China did not figure in this big game, and Europe also has receded backwards after the Second World War. This period is known as Cold War era. After that, 1990s, USSR got collapsed. And after its collapse, USA emerged as one single pole. It is often described as end of world history and democracy to be the final destination of all the countries. This is what Francis Fukuyama has said. In that scenario, after globalization post 2000, the world has said to be shifted towards multi-vector world or multipolar world. In a multipolar world, aligning yourself with multiple powers and ensuring proper relations to balance each other is seen as important. Originally, Russia China had much of border dispute. And second, the trust was very weak, though they were ideologically connected. During the Mao era, you can see that they are unable to face, eye to eye at that particular moment. But recently, Xi Jinping called Russian President Putin as a close friend and a colleague. No other premier did it so before from China. So, what we have to understand by this? Today, the China-Russia relations appears to be all rosy and all-time high. Is that true? Can this relation stand for long? That's what we have to examine over here. So, the three basic foundations for these relations are peaceful borders today. Second, expanding trade and economic interests. Third is a shared mistrust towards USA. So, enemy's enemy is a friend. This kind of attitude is shown by these two countries. Let us critically examine these peaceful borders. You know, Xi Jinping is calling rejuvenation of Chinese nation. Though the borders appears to be peaceful today, the extremist elements in China still claims that the Tsarist Russia did lot of harm to the Chinese pride and China as a nation. Much of the land is taken up by the Tsarist Russia from the Chinese. Still, that hurt feeling is there in China. Once the China becomes assertive against Russia, probably these are expected to open up again. Second, the trade ties and economic interests. You know, Russia is very weak economically today, and Russia is dependent majorly on its exports to Europe, and Europe using it as a leverage to bring Russia to the discussion table. And recent sanctions against Russia has put it in a very delicate position. In this context, China is a trustful trading partner today to Russia. $400 billion worth of gas is made to buy from Russia by China. So, China is buying $400 billion of gas, which is huge for Russia. It decreases Russian dependency on European market. And further to that, a new pipeline is being built which is called Power of Siberia to transfer this gas. It means it is expected to create lot of economic potential over there. On the other side, trade balance. Today, trade balance appears to be marginally surplus towards Russia. But the nature of imports and exports, if I say, Russia is exporting gas and minerals, and China is exporting high end equipment. It means clearly China is expected to shift trade balance in its favor in the long run. That is the point. Second, why Russia is depending on China due to sanctions from Europe. In this case, once the sanctions are lifted, obviously Russia also tries to diversify its economic interests and that is expected to broaden its dependency on China, decrease its dependency on China. From that perspective, we have to say mutual mistrust with the USA. So this has made China to take up the military technology from Russia. Understand, it is military technology, not just military equipment. Though it is importing S-400 Triumph missiles from Russia in complete built unit, most of the times it is taking just the technology. And China has its big manufacturing base. So once China gets this technology and improvises it with its manufacturing base, don't you think it becomes independent and autonomous from Russia? Obviously. And Russia can be pushed by China as a junior partner once this particular tables are turned, once these particular things are changed. So, from this perspective, we can say that the situation is not all rosy between China and Russia. Then let us see India Russia relations in this context. Once Russia was a very reliable, trustful political partner for India, and India went for peace cooperation agreement, peace trust and cooperation agreement with Russia during Indira Gandhi era. But today, Russia is seeing India as a commercially motivated partner rather than a true partner. So we need to remember one word of Indira Gandhi over here. Like every garden, the garden of friendship must be consistently tended, continuously nurtured. That's what is Indira Gandhi word, and we need to remember that. The next article is contempt powers in the name of people, in the people name. This is about Prashant Bhushan case. You know that Mr. Prashant Bhushan, an eminent lawyer, he was convicted for contempt of the court recently. So Supreme Court's conviction here happened in the name of people. Supreme Court held that judgment is to protect the people at large and to uphold rule of law. It is in the collective interest of the public and nation at large. What is the central opinion? If the people loses confidence on the courts, it leads to weakening of administration of justice, which is not in the interest of the rule of law in this particular country. The authority of the court is essential to protect the rights and liberties of the people. So author here says that the authority of the court lies in the judgments, orders and reasons it gives, not just in imposing the contempt of court. That is what is the central theme. Now, author also has quoted how the Supreme Court's authority is raised with its correction of previous judgments. In this context, he quotes four cases. One is A.K. Gopalan case, which is corrected in Menaka Gandhi case. In A.K. Gopalan case, Article 21, that is right to life and liberty, is narrowly interpreted. In Menaka Gandhi case, it is broadly interpreted, and principles of natural justice, due process of law, everything came into the constitution. Second, in ADM Jabalpur case, the Supreme Court did not stand with the people with regard to the rights during the times of emergency. Later, the same was relieved in Puttuswamy judgment. So, the Supreme Court, when looked back and corrected its judgments, obviously it added value to the court and its dignity. In this case, Kedarnath Singh case, Supreme Court made an important observation. In scurrilous attempt against the court or judges, or any criticism about the court or judges, should not be punished if it does not lead to an obstruction of justice. So it means whenever contempt of courts cases have to be seen, Supreme Court has to refer this Kedarnath Singh judgment, in which the Supreme Court has to look that any kind of that unscrupulous criticism is obstructing the justice or obstructing the administration of justice. That is the first philosophy. Second, the famous jurist Justice Krishna Iyer's statement is been quoted from Mulgokar case. In this, what he said is, judges shall not be hypersensitive in contempt cases. That is what is the point we need to remember and take to the examination. Judges shall not be hypersensitive in the case of contempt cases. The next article is privatization via graded autonomy. Here you need to remember the word graded autonomy. So, autonomy levels start from centers of excellence and they slowly weaken for the affiliated colleges. This is what is described as graded autonomy. It means multiple levels of autonomy given to the colleges and universities. Why these multiple levels of autonomy are existing? This is based on their performance. What kind of performance? One is academic, the other is financial performance. If they are able to get their own finances and run the institutions by themselves like IITs, IIMs, they are being relieved from regulatory control of the government. So, in the self autonomous institutions, they can create their own courses, they can determine their fees, they can determine the quality standards, they can evaluate their performance, etc. So it means they will be totally free from the regulatory control of the government. On the other side, affiliated colleges, they will be tightly regulated through a centralized mechanisms like higher education council, national college commission, etc., education commission, etc. So there is a binary. On one side, you have certain colleges which are over regulated. There are other colleges which are not regulated at all. So in these autonomous colleges, new courses will be tailor made to increase the revenue of the colleges in the longer run. Obviously, that creates financial barriers for the weak and marginalized to enter into these colleges. So once the cost of education increases, it decreases the access and it will not be readily available to all the sections of the society, and it means the equity will be undermined. Once access and equity is undermined, it is in the right spirit of universalization of education. If the cost of education goes up, then equity and access related to higher education are expected to suffer. The next is formalizing a known reality. This article is written in the context of recent UAE Israel pact to establish formal diplomatic relations. What the author is saying is it is nothing but a formal acknowledgement of already existing situation on ground. Gulf Cooperation Council has proposed to all its member nations to recognize Israel. Oman, Bahrain, these countries are already in the way to do the same. The Saudi Arabia is not expected to join the bandwagon immediately because it may lose legitimacy of protector of the Muslim holy sites if it joins hands with Israel. So that's why it may wait for a while. Why these countries are trying to develop these relations with Israel? They see more Israel as a protector against the resurgent Iran in the region. And the second thing is the what Palestine got out of this UAE Israel deal? Nothing. Mr. Netanyahu has clearly stated that he will temporarily suspend the annexation of West Bank. But observe carefully, he did not suspend this temporary annexation for UAE relations. There is a lot of pressure from United States of America, and Mr. Joe Biden, Democrat, has clearly stated that he is not in furthering of annexation of the regions of West Bank. So that's why American pressure shall be seen as a reason for Netanyahu's statement, but not the UAE-Israel pact. That's how we can put it as. Next is need for transparency. Supreme Court recently gave a ruling that Prime Minister cares is a public trust and need not be audited by CAG. Remember how the funds are collected into this. The central government owned it up, actively promoted the donations, also offered the tax benefits. It means the fund has got lot of authorization from the central government. Second is Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman and three cabinet ministers are its trustees. So it has a lot of public character to it. So in spite of court's judgment, it is in the goodwill of the government that it has to ensure the transparency on receiving of the funds and spending of the funds from this particular the PM Cares fund. That is what the author is stressing on. Unlike this PM Cares fund, the National Disaster Response Fund is shared between the center and the states and it is in the federal spirit. So better NDRF is used in the place of PM Cares Fund. That's what is suggested in this article. The next article is data power. You know that data is the new engine oil, or data is the oil for democracy today. So, data is the basis for information knowledge. In this context, data can navigate the public opinion if organized and structured well. This is how Amazon, Google have become the global giants. So, it is seen in the context of USA elections that public opinion can be manipulated using the data available with social media. What Cambridge Analytica did is this: it has collected certain profiles of the individuals and psychologically activated an application through which it was able to categorize the people. So, this is what is called psychological profiling. After that, it has sent specifically directed messages to them, which is expected to have influenced the elections in United States of America. See carefully, powerful governments and powerful media organizations, especially social media organizations, that have control over the psychological profiles of the citizens, if they come together, then it is a very grave danger to democracy. In this context, recently in Wall Street Journal, an article has come up which shows the partisan and selective behavior of Facebook. It is not regulating the hatred content belonging to a particular party. This partisan behavior is expected to please a policy favoritism or to get a policy favoritism from the party in power. So, obviously, this kind of nexus to gain policy interests or policy benefits from government is a classical example of crony capitalism. So, it is not in the interest of the democracy. It is better this matter gets investigated in India. That is the central theme of this article.